Welcome to the Business End. Today's guest has walked every path of high-performance sport and business. He played for Ireland and Munster at the highest level, coached through the grind of professional rugby and built and sold a business, and now stands as one of the world's greatest sports psychologists. Dr. Stephen McIvor has spent 3 decades inside pressure, 10 years as a player, 10 years as a coach, 10 years working with Olympians, teams and executives on resilience and leadership. His doctorate explored mental toughness in sports teams, not as a theory, but as a lived practice of building the right environment. What makes Stephen stand out in this, he doesn't deal in clichés. He brings scars, stories, and lessons that show how reflection, resilience, and smarter thinking really work when pressure hits. Stephen McIvor, welcome to the Business End.
Thank you very much, Justin. I really want to meet this guy, Stephen McIvor. He sounds bloody great.
Indeed he does.
My goodness, thank you so much for those very kind, embellishing words of yours.
Yeah,
it's very kind of you and very generous, and you'll be sued by many a person for saying them.
Not at all, not at all.
Yeah, and from my end, good morning, Dr. Stephen McIvor, and we look forward to, me and Fitzy are looking forward to being on the couch today with you for an hour and a half to dig into some of these things that we hear about all the time in sport, you know, resilience and leadership and practical measures. I know that every viewer that's going to watch this is going to find this fascinating. So no pressure. As you call it, a bit of stress inoculation to start off the procedure.
Hopefully a bit of crack as well.
Hopefully, yeah.
Plenty of crack.
So let's dig into belonging and language, Stephen. You say belonging creates resilience. In business terms, what are the first signs a leader should watch for that belonging is missing in a team?
Well, one of the international coaches in my research actually said one of the markers for his team functioning is often standing outside the door and listening. Is there banter going on between the group? Is there laughter? Is there taking the mick out of each other? That comfort with each other to be able to slag each other off shows a real comforting connection, and that is a really view that we need to build those connections to make people more resilient. If Liam or Fitzy or Stephen is hit by a challenge, hit by a target that we want to achieve, you know, if we're on our own, if we feel isolated, it's bloody tough. If we feel we've got a mate beside us, if we feel we've got part of a team or a part of a team, then we're naturally more gritty. We're much more scrappy. So as a community-based species, we thrive as tribes. We get what we term, the social identity theory, where we feel stronger. I'm connected to this team. I'm connected to this company. So when we go back into the CEO and we have a very protracted situation in business organizations, people are there for varying reasons, just like they are in sport as well. But it's how do we engender that connection between people? We'll often look at team building exercises and they're often counterproductive. People are going, oh God, here we go, another day out building connections, etc. Oh my God, I hate this. So we're already creating our obstacles there, and connecting is just having conversations, getting people comfortable where they understand each other. And that then allows us to build our emotional understanding to be able to connect better. Belonging, language, the words we use, more especially than the words, is the tone, I love you, Fitzy. I love you, Fitzy. Now I'm verging on scary, but the tone, I suppose, is really key.
Indeed. And just as you're talking now, I'm thinking to myself, well, in some ways, at least from a rugby concept, and I would extrapolate this out probably to all sports, you've got that pre-season phase. So you're thrown together. There's often new players come into the group, or every season there's new players come into the group. Some have left, and you're doing the hard work together. So within that sort of stressed environment, you are getting that banter. You are building those connections. Slightly different if you're a CEO coming into an organization and taking over, or is it?
No, well, you see, I think, again, you're hitting on really valid points, Justin, because when we come in as a CEO, how do we see ourselves? What do we see as our role? What's our perception of that company? What do they need? And we create these assumptions. Well, you know, the stock market, the prices are gone down. We're not high in sales. We're not doing this. Somebody has told me that the sales team are not operating this way. Somebody told me that, well, you know, this body is not looking after. And all of a sudden we come into these preconceptions. Now, when we come into to meeting and communicating, we're not listening. And remember, even the simplest form of communication, it's receiving and relaying information. And the key is that we receive the information, first of all. So by assessing an organization, we get information to see really what the interactions are. A fantastic leader who we know, who I won't name because it was in confidence, but when he got a contract to lead a major sporting organization, he said, yeah, I'm going to take it on. I'm happy, but I'm not going to actually interact or be in control for about the first 3 months. And what he was doing was he wanted to step into the environment, look how the environment ever operated, see how people interacted, and get the understanding. He's not blocking out information from the leaders within the group, but he's allowing himself time to reflect. And this is what we're not doing. Time is so limited. We need to know who's in front of us, psychologically, skill-wise, physiological in teams, efficiency in work, and also emotionally where they are and how they're connected or not connected. What pulls from a person walking into a company, any employee, is if they don't feel they're competent enough to do the job that's required of them, but they still stretch. You know, they don't feel they've got a sense of autonomy or ownership, which is a key component for us all to be our best. But it's also that sense of, are they related? Are they connected? If someone's extremely competent, can make a lot of his own decisions or her decisions, but they walk into their office or their work and they don't feel connected, it becomes a major distraction to them and a negative. So not only will it not make them motivated to be there, but when they're doing their work, their efficiency will be pulled down because they're now going, well, what do they think? What if I do this wrong? And they'll double guess themselves. So it doesn't make a fluid, comfortable rugby team environment. So it really is about that leadership, that visualizing and understanding and gaining that information. But you hit another valid point for me, Justin. You know those pre-season training sessions where you really go to the hurt locker? That's in struggle. Humans get tighter. If we look at any of the real life disasters, humans connect. And we can orchestrate those situations in sport. We can also orchestrate those situations by giving strong tasks or goals to companies in different roles and actually giving them autonomy as a group to go and solve that problem. Give them that ownership. Before we stress them, I would say, though, Liam, Justin, is get them connected, have those connections. I mean, I remember another guy you know well, Justin, and you too, Liam, and they went on their pre-season, hard slog. I think it was 10 days abroad. And I think they had their training boots on for 30 minutes in the 10 days. They had their drinking boots on for 9 days and such. But it goes back to your point, Justin. This director, this serious, fantastic leader, real benevolent leader, recognized that he has superstars in front of him. He has super players. He wants to get the best out of these players. And for a player to go onto the pitch or to go into a boardroom, he's got to feel connected to feel strong. So they use this term about building memories. So they wanted to create memories as a group that would then sustain them when they come to war.
How do you deal with these two types of people in your organization? You're talking about building a team. How do you deal with introverts who've got no interest really in socializing, really? And how do you deal with, say, busy family people that, like you, me, got children?
It's a brilliant question, Liam. It's a brilliant question because we've already fucked ourselves up. Did I say the word?
Don't worry.
But we label someone an introvert and we pigeonhole people. We label people, they're aggressive, they're lazy, they're ADHD, they're et cetera. Human beings, unfortunately, we compartmentalize, we pigeonhole. And when we pigeonhole, we limit people. So when we give a label to someone or when we describe someone, we need to be very judicious. If we look at that introvert, for the example that you mentioned, Liam, yes, they're going to be more towards the left of the scale if we have introverted to extroverted. Absolutely. But are they zero extroversion? Are they 100%? We all sit on continuums. And when we talk about performance, it's far better to see the positives in that people. And sometimes introverts, by the way, give us fantastic reflective thinking. Oftentimes are the real considered thinkers. So if we give somebody a label, we got to be very understanding that they can still move along. And every introvert will want to be connected to someone. Even in a big organization, they'll want to have one or two connections or to feel that sense of connection. So how do we deal with the introvert and the extrovert? Of course, they're on different poles. But first and foremost, we got to sort of understand, well, are we limiting them in terms of their ability to shift to be a little bit more connected? Or the extrovert to be a little bit more reflective in their thinking and maybe a little bit more independent in their thinking and processes?
Yeah, no, excellent answer.
Yeah. Humans, we have so much information now. It's so hard to congest it. And I love this phrase, to understand, we cannot judge. So if we judge someone, we're not really understanding who's in front of us. And again, I'm maybe extrapolating from us saying that someone's introverted or someone's got ADHD or someone's aggressive. But if I say that about someone, I lower my understanding of that person. And I'm making assumptions. Well, that's the way they are. Every person wants to get along. Every person, introvert, extrovert, every person gets defensive.
Yeah.
Knows I can do it the odd time and bite. Technology breaking down is one of those things. But we are an incredible species and we're constantly changing. But if we label someone, we can really limit them and we can limit our understanding of that person, which doesn't allow us to lead them.
Yeah. It's just, when you talk about corporate team building or corporate drinks and stuff like that, I often think like the people, I won't call them introverted anymore. I don't know what label. I'm not going to give them a label, actually. I'll be in trouble. I don't know what to say now because I can't say anything. But it's just like, if you're a CEO, how do you get everyone like in, if you can't do like social events out of hours because certain people won't go, like what's the one tip perhaps that you could do within an office environment to bring everyone together to stop another label, I won't call it that, taking over and ruining the confidence? Because Tony Underwood did something brilliant, didn't he, Fitzy, in his podcast? He mentioned about his mother in the pizza advert. And sometimes those introverts are the ones that step up, the quiet ones, the ones you don't expect, the ones that step up. And that's important for businesses. How do we get that done with team building and things?
Yeah, no, totally, Liam. And as we mentioned, like those introverts are often reflecting and thinking and evaluating situations. We have the quiet winger that mightn't be as sort of boisterous or in the middle of it like a prop.
A scrum half.
Or a scrum half. Worse again. Or a hooker. Jesus.
I think scrum halves are the worst, for sure.
Justin.
I can't defend you there, mate.
Oh, and to be honest, there is no defense. But so we do know that there's massive value with any person. And our role as leaders is to extract the value and make them happy. Because when we're having crack, when we're having banter, everyone operates better. Our brains, our neural pathways work better. So how do we do it? It is recognizing that we've all got something to offer and give. But if we look at building what we call social capital in an organization or a team is that sort of another word for cohesion. How much are they connected? How much crack are they having together? And what we recognize is we utilize cultural architects within the group, or we utilize certain leaders in the group. I mean, I played with Justin and in rugby, other things after rugby, but we would have recognized, those what I term mixers. And sometimes it can be an annoying little scrum half, or it can be a center, or it can be a fancy Dan 10 who's taking the mick out of people or something like this, or a hooker, etc. And those people often create the multiple connections between the people that might be sort of slightly out of that loop. So you're bringing them in. They're not going to be in the core of it. But what good leadership is, for me, is recognizing who's in front of them and saying, how do I connect with Justin to then go and say, listen, Justin, I think, Liam's feeling, he's a great thinker. He's got a lot to add to the team. We just need to get him involved more, and I'm going to put you in a rooming list with him. And I want you in that situation to really think about, how do we get the best out of Liam? How do we make him feel more comfortable? And it really is about getting people to feel comfortable, to share that knowledge. So we use, maybe the Paul O'Connell type leader, the let's charge into war. We might use the hump sort of delegated leader. But sometimes really useful within organizations is having the messer, the connector. And endorsing that allows people to feel, we'll take the piss out of Stephen again because he's only, but it creates cohesion, social capital.
Yeah,
So that
absolutely.
so that then comes back and builds nicely on what you said then. So the leader is going in, he's observing, he's listening, he's empowering. So, I mean, to answer, I think, Liam's question, there is no one size fits all, right? You have to go through those steps there to see what's appropriate. And I think this is much more applicable to a certain extent for the corporate environment than it is for the sporting environment, because you've got the pre-season. There's a certain amount of connectivity that comes through doing hard work on the field together. So it's a bit more natural. But in the corporate environment, it's not that. So you have to go through that process, observe, listen, empower, and then choose, okay, well, Liam's the mixer there. He can be the connector, and you're empowering that person to bring in those different personality types to bring to the fore those different skills. Would that be a correct analysis?
100%. And the simplicity of it is knowing who's in front of you. We talk about knowing the audience, knowing your team. And it's so simple, but it's so hard because we've got so much pressure and expectations on us. And we got to, work up the numbers in terms of turnover. We've got to do this. We've got to get wins. I mean, in my own research, one of the World Cup winning coaches would have said, you still have to build up enough wins to give yourself time to change that culture. And again, there's so much stuff here, guys, is when that leader walks into that room or walks into that company or walks into that office, how is he labeling himself? Because how he sees himself and the expectations from the board, from the owners of the company, from the external viewpoint, oh my God, Stephen's just taken over this CEO job. And then all of a sudden I'm going, what am I, I'm going to dominate them. Oh, I'm going to tell them what to do. Or I'm going to change this. And we then label ourselves and we can get in our own way. Whereas no, as a leader, I'm a supporter and I'm an influencer in terms of influencing people to get us where we want to go. And it's always, as humans, we're a goal-oriented species. So it's really, really useful for us to have a goal, whether it's to go on the rip, whether it's to go to Paris, whether it's to lie on a beach, whether it's to build up massive profits. Goals give us a real focus and it gives us a purpose. And investing in those is really important. And then going back to that labeling ourselves as leaders, there's an expectation on leaders. And I see it all too often. We promote people and then they feel, right, I'm no longer Sandra, the middle management. Now I'm Sandra, the head of the department, and I might be, new to leadership. So we will attribute certain things that we need to do. No, we need to connect. We need to understand who's in front of us. And for me, part of that, guys, is understanding ourselves.
Absolutely. Know yourself before you know your team. I'll tell you, a great person you talked about, the mixer, was the late, great Gary Halpin. He's brilliant at it. And humor, like you mentioned humor a lot, having a sense of humor. And what he used to do, Fitzy, as is no one was immune from his tongue. But I used to find that the introverts and the people that are perhaps more isolated within the group, he would bring them in by,
Yeah.
and I would feel that, and I would see that when I was younger. I was probably quite on the introvert side, and he would come in and take the mick out of you, and you'd feel like you were part of the team. And humour is so important.
Such a great example, Liam, and God,
Yeah.
what a top human being. Even, you know, as we all know, Gary, like a heart of gold. He could have been a stand-up comedian. I mean,
Oh yeah.
but I still remember driving into Limerick. We're on a training session in Limerick. We're on the train down. And he's going, here we are arriving into Limerick, and it's a grey day, and there's grey houses, and there's grey. Whatever he was, he would just take the mick. But he added so much energy. Yeah, people like that are so invaluable, and he's just a gem.
But it brings in the introverts and makes everyone feel connected, having someone like that within your team.
We all want to feel connected. Introverted, extroverted, wherever you sit in the continuum.
Yeah.
We all want to feel valued and connected.
Yeah, absolutely.
A great man and sorely missed. You mentioned leaders there, so that's a nice segue into the next question. You said leaders can be bewitched by their own words. Can you share a moment where leadership either built or broke trust?
Well, trust is a really interesting aspect in there, Justin. You know, we would trivially say it takes 5 years to build trust and 5 minutes to lose it. You know, bewitched by our own words is attached a little bit to what we're saying to ourselves. If we say Justin he's just not up to it, then that changes our behaviors to Justin instead of optimizing them. I had a coach meeting, a seminar with around the table in a I'm trying to conscious of not in an organization in a sport, and one of the coaches said we had a group of young athletes that were sort of planning for the Tokyo Games. So, but this was like a year out from Rio. So it was still, they were only like 13, 14. They were young athletes that we were looking at. And the coach said, well, you know, that individual there is really only about, you know, 2 minutes 5 for their event, right? And I said, that's their current situation. That's what they're hitting at the moment. And the coach said, no, that's their maximum. That's their peak. They're not going to get any more than that, you know? And I went, wow. Then unfortunately I asked him, do you know the 6 numbers for the lotto on Saturday? Because it didn't go down so well at the time, but this is incredible. Like, we like to sort of label or put people in boxes, and then we do bewitch ourselves by, well, we can't win the match. If a coach doesn't believe he's going to win the match, then he's not going to push them. He's not going to stretch them. He's not going to see more in them. A controversial, no. Well, so players woke up in 2015 World Cup, and they opened up the newspapers. They're playing their critical match to go through or not go through from the group that they were in. And they read an article that their coach had been quoted in, and it was something to the effect, you know, that, well, if they can't deal with the pressure now, you know, they shouldn't be here or something like this. And you're going, whoa, everyone's feeling pressure. We're not in the right place. But as a leader, you have got to see more. You have got to find solutions when you walk into that room. You know, there is always an opportunity from any challenge. And as leaders, we've got to actually find that. And we've got to find more in the people in front of us. It is very frustrating when someone lets you down, when someone shocks you, when someone has different value set, which is a key component. Well, we can, to defend ourselves, we can judge them and we can pigeonhole them, and, you know, that's what they're going to deal with. But if we want to help people grow as a leader, and we look at the really good leaders in business, it doesn't mean that they wrap them up in cotton wool. They challenge them. They absolutely challenge people. And to see more in them, we need to challenge people. But they do engage with them, and they see more in that person. And there is, in every one of us, always more, as Arthur Guinness has said a few times.
No, I mean, that's incredibly true. I think, you know, words have power. So, I mean, if you if you don't believe you can do it, then you're going to exactly fulfill that prophecy and not do it. So yeah, I mean, I think that's very,
it becomes
prophecy. Yeah, absolutely.
If a player doesn't believe he's going to win the match, is he going to run harder for that ball? Is he going to, we've talked over the years, Justin, and we've often said leadership and coaching is the hard conversations. If I want to get the best out of someone, and I sort of want to get back to that question that you said there about, breaking trust, is my unwritten contract is to help you get where you want to get to. And that's to make the best of you. So to get the best out of human beings, we cannot let them sit in comfort all the time. We shouldn't let them sit in comfort too much. We absolutely need comfort. We need recovery. We need rest. But for people to be at their best, they got to be uncomfortable. In the world we live in now, it's like, oh, no, I want to feel relaxed. No, if you're going to be at your best, you ain't going to relax. You're going to feel, holy fuck, my fight or my flight? And coaches need to see, leaders in business need to see more in people. And if we label, we can limit. If we label ourselves, we can limit. There's always, and we see this in leaders, it's adopting a growth mindset of finding solutions. And there's always solutions. People say, oh, Stephen, that's bullshit. You can't find solutions, blah. No, there's always a better way. There's always we still be, as the brilliant movie, and I used the quote a few times, the brilliant movie, The Shawshank Redemption. The poor fella, he's in prison, falsely accused, even worse again, locked away for life. And I don't know, it was Morgan Freeman or someone said to him in Shawshank Redemption, either get busy living or get busy dying. We're down by 30 points in the game. How do we want to finish? We've still got these 5 minutes to show really what defines us. Doesn't matter about the score. What the fuck do we want to show in this last 5 minutes? Regardless, in fact, even because of the score, we fucking show now what we're about.
No, I totally agree. And, as I said there, words have power, and we've talked about stressed environments, and they happen. With business, sport, life, you're going to be stressed. Within that, you talked about growth mindset. For leaders, I think you've got to believe there's a way. Whether you can see the path or not, you've got to believe the way. And I love history, and I always reflect back on what Hannibal did with the elephants and the Alps. And his quote at the time was, we'll find a way, we'll make one. He had no idea what the path was, but he was gonna find one or make one. And I think that comes back to what you were saying. You've got these stress environments, you've got these challenges, but if the leader can project a mindset where he's going to solve that problem and project confidence, that becomes very intoxicating for the group, and they can see the path forward, or at least believe there's a path forward.
I never knew you were that old, Justin. Number
I look well on it.
But when you were sitting on that elephant, but there's so much again in that, Justin. We have that emotional contagion. We know we follow the warrior into battle. We're not too sure why the flip are going in there, but we're going into that battle. But you're spot on, and I love the way. I'm not too sure that he's going to find a way. It's brilliant. If we actually all say to ourselves in any situation, this is crap, this is shit, this is where I don't want to be, I'm going to find a way out of it. All of a sudden, we open up our neural pathways to literally find solutions. I mean, it sounds simplistic and so easy, but it is doable. And it is simple when we get into practice. So when we hit those real obstacles, say to ourselves, no, I'm going to find a way out of this. I'm going to optimize this shit situation. I don't care what it is. I'm going to find a way. And our brains will work better. We will work with people around us. We'll also effuse an element that I'm going to find a way. And people want to go the way. People want to follow. So Justin, there's so much brilliance in that example. As leaders, and every human being has the potential to be a leader. And this is what I even said to my students the other day, who's the leader in the room? And, one guy put his arm up. And I says, what the rest is? You lying? We're all leaders. If there was no one else there and you're the only person in the room, you're a leader. By de facto, we're the boss of ourselves. And it's really how did Hannibal get to that position, his life experiences, etc., etc. But it's a reflection. Where do I want to go? What's going to bring me there? Am I going to be the victor here, or am I going to be the victim? Oh, poor me, the mountains are too high. We can't do this, we can't do this. And humans, we are programmed to protect ourselves, our ego and ourselves as humans. So sometimes we get a comfort blanket by being a victim, but it doesn't allow us grow. And it doesn't allow a leader grow. Taking that ownership, one of my brilliant and extremely smart cohort in my research, he'd captained his country and played a long time. So we talked about, what gave him his resilience, And he said there was one critical time that the guy was on the verge of retiring. He was 32, 33. But he brought me back to when he was 17 years old. And he said it was 16, in fact, I think. So he was going to a trial for the province that he was in to play for that province. And he was going into the trial, number one, and didn't work out for him that well in the day because of a certain facet of his game. So he's driving home. His mother's driving him to there and bringing him back. And he's stroppy. He's, typical, young kid giving out. And the mother pulled the car over and said, "What's wrong with you?" And he went, "Oh, they ddn't think I did this well. And that's not my game. And I do a different game. And I like to play this." And she goes, "Well, what do they want to see in you? Oh, they want more of this or more of that, blah, blah," whatever it was. And this is the nugget. She said, "What can you do about it?" And they sat there and they, on that uncomfortable, hard discussion that we talked about, that hard conversation. And it's not easy for a mom or a dad having those, What can you do about it? And well, I suppose I can, eventually I can practice. I suppose I can put the time in and, blah, blah. Started up the car, drove back. He went out into his back garden, started working on that skill that he needed to do. And, the rest is history, as they say. I sometimes recount that story because the parents do pull the car over. And they pull the car over to turn around and go back and give out to the coaches for not picking their son. And the son or the daughter feels, "Oh, great, mom and dad are supporting me, looking after me. It's beautiful." And nothing surer than they're shooting the kid in the foot. They're taking away the ownership, the power, the responsibility, the growth. You're the boss of this, and the discipline, everything. We want to support people sometimes so much that we don't condition and prepare them for challenges. And this guy recounted this story, what was it, 16 years later? So whether it was true or not, it's true in the fact that it was significant to him. That's where he recognized he took ownership, that he needed to have the discipline to work. And I just think, the toughest leadership role in the world is parenting. And I think it's so many variables and so many unknowns. But that mother, I even almost get emotional and think about it, just gave him ownership and gave him responsibility. And that's not easy for kids these days, and not for any kid in any day. But that tough conversation made him stronger.
Yeah, I mean, that's excellent. I mean, they're finding a way, as Fitzy says. I mean, one thing, you say about finding a way, and if you're in a hole and how you get out of it, is, if we talked about this before, people being obsessed with a plan or a goal, or they're so determined. I've seen this in recruitment. I've spoken about this before, where I have two sales guys doing the exact same thing, and one person always gets the results and the other person doesn't. Now, why is that? I said, because that person who gets the results got intent, and it comes across in absolutely everything that they do, all the finer detail, whereas the other person's just going through the motions, and it affects results. One person's obsessed, one person isn't obsessed, and therefore that person isn't resilient and the other one is. How does that sound?
I think that's fascinating, Liam, because again, when we look at that, if you've got those two people and without knowing the situation is, and it goes back to Justin's point he mentioned about trust and leadership, is Is that person that's not been as effective, as you say, spot on, they're going through the motions, but are they replicating the motions of the other guy, i.e. what the other guy does with that intensity, that personal approach or touch? And is he replicating, or is he doing it his own way? So when we want to lead or be efficient or perform, we often think, oh, this is how the traditional way to pass the ball. This is the traditional way to play tennis. This is the traditional way to this. No, we got to find our own way. We take the information in. But one of those sales guys says, yeah, I'm going to take the information, the knowledge, how he does, but I'm going to do it my way. And that goes back to that question that Justin asked there about leaders, where they break down, is when we're not authentic, when we try to portray ourselves, GAA is a big sport in Ireland, there's county teams. And sometimes the coach, wants to get along so much that he's not challenging. And there's nothing sure that people in an office or people in a team pick up when the leader is just trying to ingratiate themselves without having the focus of where they want to go, because that's his role, get us to where we're going. But it's not that we don't get on. Absolutely, we get on. We have crack, we banter, but we switch focus. We have the crack, but that's where we're fucking going, guys. Don't forget, this is where we're going. Are we together? Is this your goal? How do we get there? So, yeah, I agree. We got to take information, for me, in terms of efficiency, and then optimize that and optimize ourselves in terms of the leaders. We all feel pressure at times. If we're not rested correctly, if we're carrying too many things, it can really buckle us, no matter how experienced we are. And we've seen, even in my own research, World Cup winning coaches that didn't win at certain stages, and they'll admit, as much as they don't want to, that they got in their own way. They let their pressure bleed into the team too much. And really, one of the things for me and as leaders is not to add pressure unless it's needed, but to dissipate pressure. When a team is really feeling struggles, and every team wants to do well, especially in the World Cup or the Olympics, the role of the coach, of the leader, is to counterbalance. Hey, just another opportunity, guys. This is just an opportunity to stretch ourselves, to really show how much we're committed to each other. If you're a team sport or an individual sport, this is where you go to hell and you go to battle with yourself, because this is the only person you're ever competing against is yourself. And what we're doing by that is we're limiting that we're in the Olympics. We're limiting the focus on the Olympics. This cycle, this swim, this run, this is you against yourself. And we've heard that cliche before, but that's where we really need to be the best of ourselves, not competing.
So if, we talk about tone and words, and you're saying that builds culture, okay, and not slogans, catchy slogans on a wall, just do it or whatever, okay? So if a CEO, you're a CEO of a company, you've had a disastrous quarter and you want the team to rebound, what do you say to them and how do you deliver that message?
For me, it's really understanding the nuance within that. So why is that? When we look at any performance, Liam, we've got to look at why. And we will, again, when we like to compartmentalize, we've lost all the figures, we've lost the sales, we've lost the turnover. But what is it? When we look at rugby, we always look at critical incidence analysis or a performance. And if we simplify it in terms of maybe a sporting analogy, did we do enough work in our physiology? Were we flexible enough in those roles? All those controllables. What was the data analysis? And we know that we're flooded with data analysis in today's world. But what is the most important bit of information? What's and that's where leaders come in, whilst engaging with maybe the leaders and the experienced players within the team and their coaching team. Well, what's that going to do for us? So instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater in those situations where you're saying we're not things, we got to understand why. Why is it not working? And then it allows us to make a much more informed, judicious plan. And smart leadership coaching is visualizing how we're going to work. That's going to work. That's going to try. What's impacting here? What's the correlation to that, et cetera, et cetera. So it is visualizing and seeing those plans down the road of where we want to get to. We own our performances. I worked with a team there recently, and it was amazing. I mentioned there about the data analysis. We have so much stats now, But one of the stats within this team was body composition, body fat. And of course it helps performance, but not necessarily within this.
Not if you're a prop.
Well, we want more. We want more. That's all we want. There is always more. More burgers. I don't feel I'm up to it, coach. Okay, we'll get some more burgers. That sounds good. But I think even within that, I think it's brilliant, Justin, because within any sport and within any team, we have the situational demands. And if we look at a company, we have the contextual situational demands of what we need to master and conquer. And that comes from that leadership, reflecting, planning, thinking. But I suppose the anecdote over this thing about the body fat was, it wasn't instrumental to them playing the game. It wasn't instrumental to them performing, but they had a fascination with it. And that's where players' then attention goes to, instead of, well, where's my skill set? How do I stretch myself more? How do I connect with my teammate?
Yeah. Too many leaders. Firstly, it's about knowing your team, isn't it? So if you know Fitzy needs loads of burgers to perform, you feed him burgers.
Yeah, I suppose I'm biased, and probably we're all biased towards rugby.
Yeah.
But the quirkiness of rugby, you know, the reflective beanpoles, the robust full-bodied front rows, the annoying little 9s and 2s. But we are a great, conglomeration of oddities, and we come together, and we do get to understand. I mean, you're right there, you're on, Liam. Like, 9s are a pain in the hole. But we see those behaviors, and then we see the fancy Dan 10s. All 10s are going to hate me, apart from Humps. Humps is he's a cuddly teddy bear. But we see the different profiles of people, and for me, rugby is amazing because we need the tall, we need the short, we need the fast, we need the strong. And it's a brilliant, I suppose, synopsis of society, Get
Absolutely.
us yeah.
Absolutely. What the point I was going to make, Stephen, is that too many leaders, not all leaders, are very quick to bang the war drum when they get a bad quarter and like, well, we've got to try harder, we've got to do this and that, because it's the easy option rather than actually sitting down and analysing why things went wrong. And I think that what you've just said is amazing. People have got to analyse it more. It's not about lack of effort, lack of conviction. It's often about small changes, or it could just be a factor that you can't control.
And I think even in that, Liam, there, and I think of an example, again, one of the coaches that I mentioned, is they got to a really, the penultimate, the penultimate match, the ultimate, the final, and they lost it, and it was really tough. And of course, you got data analysis, and we're going into that, and we need to pressurize this, because there was 2 competitions. They lost this competition, and they were going on to the next competition. And the brilliance of the same director, he said, you know what? Let's just, to the management team, to the coaches, let's just go to the gym and work out, lads. Let's just park all the data. Let's park all of this stress. It's only a game. Now, this is a professional setup. It's only a game. Let's go and work out and have a bit of crack. And it allows people to let go of their ego. Physical movement is really useful for boardrooms. It's very useful for our directors to have walking meetings, because our brains will work more efficiently as we're moving at a low intensity. But this was about climb out of yourself. And that what does is it allows us to get a little bit of objectivity. It allows us to get a bit of perspective, to step back from this and go, what the fuck are we doing here, lads? Game, And we as a species, we will complicate things, and it can be simple,
Yeah. It's just like
do that. What?
half-time talk. Come on, lads! Like when you're 50 points down, like you think, what does that solve? Like, what do you mean? Come on.
Well, I think that's another great example, because when we have so many supports in our companies and in our teams now, and we've got 10, 15 minutes at halftime, and what we do is flood them with information. And there was a great story and it's well known. Joe Schmidt, a lot of coaches. I know Eddie Jones did some stuff with Pep Guardiola and Bayern Munich, and a lot of really top coaches will often meet and share ideas. I think it's a brilliant forum. So there was a guy called Anthony Daly, and he was a hurling coach. Knew Joe and asked to talk to him. So he said, "Listen, at halftime, Joe, what sort of things do you do in terms of much of information, or how many points do you hit the team with?" And he goes, "Well, what do you do at the moment, And he goes, "Well, I usually, go in, I write down my points, I've got them on a piece of paper, and I might have like 10 or 15 points, He said, "Oh, right, yeah. And why do you write them down?" He goes, "Well, so I remember them." And Joe goes, "Okay. And will the players remember all those 15 points in a congested, pressurized 10-minute situation where their ego, their ambitions, whether they've made mistakes in the first half, whether they're frustrated, are they going to be taking those in, And it is amazing. We want to overhelp sometimes. Walk into the restaurants, guys, we're down a few points. We're down. What can we do? And breaking the group into smaller groups and asking them and having those strong leaders in those different groups that are really going to run those different groups, then it allows them to say, "Fuck, we're at. This is our fucking team." And it is that balance between us giving them information, but training them or teaching them or supporting them to think of their own solutions. Because then they own that much more in terms of performance. And that is similar to business. We need to give responsibility and ownership and respect and give them where they want to go, or where do you want them to go. But yeah, it was a well-known story between Schmidt and Anthony Daly, and it just highlights we overgive so much information. And for me, on a personal level, halftime is so much more about the emotions and the psychology than it is about technical or tactical. They count, they're important, but where we are emotionally, psychologically, as you said, there, Liam, it changes what we're going to do. There's no such thing as a perfect strategy. There is no such thing, but it's about extracting. If we're fully committed to the worst strategy in the world, we're going to be effective. If we've got the greatest strategy ever thought, so intricate, and we're not fully committed to it, never work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Authentic.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting, Stephen. And as I'm listening to you there talking about in a business context of the question as to we've had a bad quarter was like having, a run of bad games, right? So context and perspective are very, very important. Is this something that we can solve with a bit of tweak here? Is there a technical or a tactical issue with the team or our process in a business? Or do we just need to focus on the plan? And as you were talking, I was thinking how important it is for leaders, whether it's a sports team or a CEO, to be able to switch to a 1,000-foot view, or in the weeds and right up close. So a hawk or a vole. You're either looking down and you've got that big plan, or you're in the weeds and you can only see the grass in front of you. And it's that situational awareness and being able to know which one is important at that moment. And have you any advice on if that's a correct analysis in your mind as to how that leader might flip from one to the other, the view, the big picture to the small picture?
Yeah, well, again, Justin, when we look at that scenario that you talked about, the overview and then getting down into the nitty-gritty, we often go, it's either or, but it's not. Strong leadership, smart leadership is being able to get down into the dirt and the weeds. But for me, and again, these are sort of some work from the research we've done, most of the coaches says we have to step back from our team and we got to see where they are. So we absolutely have a plan. We bounce or we adapt or we pivot, whatever term you want to use, but we got to bounce on our feet. We got to adapt to the different situations. And it goes back to Liam's point about, planning and the detail and the information. Where are our team emotionally, rest and recovery? Are they at what we would term in psychology their ideal zone of functioning? Have they had a time off? Have they had an opportunity to switch off and given the weekend away, or given a day out to go on the rip or do something that allows them to switch off? Humans want to be the best of themselves. Worrying about not being good enough, the result, stops them, mistakes previous stops them, opinions unfortunately kill us. But we do want to be the best of ourselves. So how do we allow people to get out of their own way and to show themselves there? I think that's the real thing. Where are your team? No matter what they're doing, if they're not in the right mindset place, and that does need pressure and stress, by the way, then they're not going to be at their best. Well, something came into my mind and drift out, but does that answer sort of, or again, these are just some of the stuff from, I suppose, my own experiences, but also the research we've done and stuff in terms of resilience, leadership. But there was something you said there, Justin. There was something else there, that the ability to shift focus is a key component. I won't be able to shift focus if I'm stressed by the past event. If I'm worried about a mistake, if I'm worried about an argument with somebody, I'm not now finding a solution. I'm still drawn back into that. The ability to cut off, and the great researcher and focus, McIvor, said, the first rule of focus is wherever you are, be there. So be fully in the boardroom, be fully on the pitch. But if we extrapolate and we take it more so, it's not just being about present there. What emotion do I want to bring with that presence? What intent do I want to bring to that presence? How do I want to feel connected to my teammates? And how do I want my teammates to feel connected to me? And that visualization, which is innate to humans, I mean, we are a visual species, allows us to plan better. And yeah, and sometimes switch off. I think that was the point. I saw a great thing about a NFL coach. And he said, if I find out any of my coaches miss a graduation of their kid, or they miss a presentation of their kid, or a special occasion, I'll fire you. And I think that is just brilliant, because, you know, we're more than just a coach. We're more than a CEO. We're more than a rugby player. We're more than a thing. And actually, we shouldn't have all our eggs in the one basket. Our identity should be way more than just being a top-notch multimillionaire CEO. And really good CEOs will have, and more comfortable CEOs will have other things like their family, like a passion, like an interest, like a charity, like other stuff. And that's the same for, in my opinion, that's the same for all humans. When I meet young tennis players, and they'll say, oh, I play tennis, and they say, yeah, I'm a tennis player. And I says, no, you're not. And they go, what? I am. I said, no, don't think you are. It's, no, I am. I play tennis. I said, no, you're a young kid who happens to be amazing at tennis, and I believe you rip it up and all the rest. And this is where we're getting to know each other. But you're a brother, aren't you? You're in school. What do you like in school? Oh, maths. I hate maths. God, I was useless at maths. You know, we have to spread and see that we are more than one thing. And no athlete, when they come to the Olympics, World Cup, in rugby, needs to go onto that pitch feeling that that's all they are. Everything is on this. No, I'm going to war. There was a captain of a national side, and you would never expect it from this person. But before they went out on to the biggest arena into war, and this person would have led most of the wars on the pitch, they would have said, no, I'm a nice person. My parents love me. I've got my partner. I've got my mates. And I'm good. So they grounded themselves. They recognized that that's who they are, but now I'm going to choose to go and rip the head off somebody. You know?
Interesting.
Identity.
And I listening to you there, and I couldn't agree more, and it was a very interesting perspective. But I also think if you walk into that, or start out in your journey as an athlete with that mindset that you're more than, you know, use the example of a tennis player, that transition out of sport is going to be that much easier, you know. And I think, absolutely, you know, from our own perspectives as former athletes, you know, when that journey finishes, it's that transition can be incredibly challenging, because you do see yourself as the rugby player or the tennis player or so on and so forth. Whereas if you've built that that foundation of, well, I'm a brother, I'm a father, I'm a whatever it is, I play golf, or whatever the other situations are, then you've got a much firmer foundation to exit and transition and to reinvent yourself.
Totally. And I think it goes back into what Liam was saying, just in terms of, when we were with the pressure points and the thinking, and it actually supports our thinking. But if I was to break away, it was only last night I saw a brief interview with Bjorn Borg, retired after 5 Wimbledons at 26. And I didn't know this, but he went into, drinking and different substances and stuff like this, again, attached to that. When we come out of that bubble, I remember vividly when I got in my own way and lost my contract, walking with my partner and going, I don't know how to turn on a photocopier, let alone be in an office. Like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I've been a professional rugby player for the last umpteen years, and before that, etc., etc. So it is a real tough station. I saw Usain Bolt say he struggled to walk up the stairs after he retired. The tragedy, and it's not a sole reason, but the tragedy with Ricky Hatton and talking about, himself talking about when he finished. And this is really, it's not, as you said, Justin, it's not something that's helpful at all. But we're now seeing, in fact, and the research is telling us, actually, players will benefit and play better knowing that they're actually spending time doing a course on such and such. A great guy, David Lavaley's done a lot of research in the area, and there's a great video clip out there. But it just shows you we're more than just one thing as humans, And that goes back to that point I was saying there to Liam, is like, when a CEO is in that pressure point, and if they think that's all they are and all that, it doesn't give them objectivity. Active recovery means that we turn the laptop down, and it is really tough for people that are highly committed. Close the laptop and go for a walk with their partner, with their kids, lose themselves in something else that actually allows our brains to slow down and decompress in those areas, which allows our neural pathways to be much more efficient when we come back to those things. But it's really hard when we put pressure on ourselves that this is all I am. This is all I am, So it helps humans feel better. It helps people transition, as you said, Justin, which is key. But it also helps us perform better in the moment where we are. And it allows leaders to be, all of us, to be more efficient thinkers. Active recovery is really hard. These things here really undermine our brains. We sleep 8 hours a night or 6 hours a night or whatever it is to recover for physiologically, but our brains are still working at nighttime, but they slow down and they recover. We are using them at 5th gear all the time with these phones and these information, and we're not reflecting enough. We're not slowing down, which allows our thinking to be more efficient. Speaking of slowing down, I think I should slow down.
No, very, very valid.
I apologize.
No, it's fascinating.
No,
I mean, the point that you made about athletes and retirement is gold, and it's such a valid point. So
for us all.
Yeah. It's as we discussed, is finding a purpose, another purpose. Some people find it instantly, some people it takes time, but it is for all of us.
Yeah, Drico talked about it as well, Liam. I remember. Yeah. Driscoll, I just saw him the other day, but he's gone through it. I think Justin, did you find it? And Liam, you find it like when we stop playing, we lose our tribe? Jerry Flannery talks about Jerry Flannery. He asked the Munster coaches, could he go to the gym still so he could feel part of the.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, it's a loss of identity, isn't it? In a lot of ways, and I think that the point you touched upon, recognizing you are more than just that. The athlete, the rugby player, the tennis player is key, and that also allows you to be more efficient, as you've just stated, along that pathway, along that journey, because you can keep more balance in your life, whether you're doing a college course or a trade or a hobby, or you're more present in a relationship or with your friends or so on and so forth. And it's yes, to be a high performer, you need to be committed, you need to work hard, but you also need to have off time. You need to have balance. And so often, and I think we've probably all suffered from this, and it's certainly something that comes out in the conversations that we have on the podcast, that people struggle with that. Athletes struggle with that, high performers struggle with that, and it's such an important thing for the next stage, but it's also a really good stratagem for the moment to allow us to be more efficient, to be more present, to be more high performing when we're switched on. So that's absolute gold.
Totally. You see, in that, Justin, I couldn't agree more. Spot on. And balance, as we all know, is so key, right? So, yeah, but no, balance is, that's where I want to be, I want to balance. But the bloody problem is balance keeps moving. Our balance is personal, it's contextual, and it's situational. So my balance to optimize my situation sometimes is very relaxed because there's a lot of pressure. Sometimes I need to increase my intensity. Sometimes I'm working too hard. I need to slow down and take a time off. Sometimes I'm taking too much time off and I need to work harder. Sometimes I'm feeling really confident and really relaxed, and I don't put as much time in detail into planning my business meeting or my performance, and we fall on our faces. So it's adapting and moving. Humans were constantly changing. Nothing endures but change. And again, I think we said near the sort of start is, yes, know who's in front of you, but know ourselves, know where we are at that moment. And that's blooming tough. It's, am I comfortable, or am I too comfortable? Do I need to get myself up there? I mean, the great example, a brilliant self-manipulator, Michael Jordan in The Last Dance, when they lost that, I think it was the fifth game or what it was, he recognized he hadn't got himself up to the place where he needed to be at his best. So he created a narrative in the media that I'm not good enough. He's a has-been. He's past it. So he literally manipulated his own thinking to get himself into an FU played. I'm gonna, and that allowed him to then bring that into the game. And I suppose going back to me in the business is, we can get very pressure, walking into the boardroom meeting, and then we forget who's in front of us. And who are we trying to get to go with us is the people in front of us. So balance is absolutely the goal, but it keeps moving a little bit, and we got to try and find where our optimal balance is to achieve what we want to do. For me, in those goals, where do we want to get to?
Don't you think that you need leaders that are kind of stronger-minded leaders who, rather than going on about business and sales and revenue, are more open-minded? And do you think that you could apply the same kind of principle to sport, that you need more leaders, CEOs, directors of rugby who are can understand the bigger picture about having balanced individuals and how that boosts performance, rather than saying, it's all about the figures, it's all about the result? What would you say?
Yeah, for me, it goes back to that thing, Liam, where to optimize ourselves, we do need to have rest and recovery. But what, as we also said, or also I suggest, is that when we're at our best, is we need pressure. So it's not that humans are incredibly capable, and we can, James Crean, the great discoverer, expeditionist, and humans have overcome amazing physical trials over a period of time of weeks, days, etc. But we still need time to recover. So having those pressure points where we deliberately as a leader say, this is going to be our tough zone, guys. This is what we're going to go into. This is our plan, our goal for that medium term, and we're going to go hell for leather at this. But we are also going to turn off afterwards. We are also going to have this time off. So it also sustains us through that tough battle that I know this is going to finish. If we felt that the battle was never going to finish and we're constantly under the cosh and we're constantly, then not only would we feel less autonomous, we would feel stress and pressure that would burn us out. So a really smart leader is, where are my players? Where are my team now? Do I need to apply a bit more pressure? Some of the best coaches and most of the international coaches will have a barometer. So they'll have a guy that they will trust. Usually they've been in that same sport, and they'll come into the environment and they'll just sit around for a week and they'll look at the meetings and they'll look at the training sessions. At the end of the week, they're not talking about tactics or technique or any of those sort of stuff, but they're picking up the mood of the room. And they're picking up, yeah, well, Dave, your team are good. They're really in a good space. Some of them, there's an element of a little bit apathy coming in, that they're sort of a little bit more comfortable than they should be. Or, you need to switch off. You need to dial down the stress. They are walking onto the pitch or going into their work carrying too much. And as leaders, we gain so much from reflection and planning and obviously experience, and we sit down and see where we are, where our team are. But having an external barometer coming in, someone that we trust, and trust is key again, as Justin said, it allows us to get perspective. And then that allows us to be a bit more judicious and be a bit smarter,
I think you've really touched upon some gold there, and I think sport does this way better than business in my opinion, and it's that periodization, right? Where you've got different, just take rugby, you've got different phases within the season: the pre-season, the competition phase, and the championship phase within a season. So you go in, and that may be more nuanced with different competitions and international windows and so on and so forth. My point being, you periodize it, right? There's a building phase, there's an unloading phase, etc., and you're building in off days, downtime, lighter sessions, etc. So you're managing that physical, emotional roller coaster over the course of a season so that you can peak. Business, I think, could learn a lot from that, and we've got an epidemic in a lot of businesses in terms of burnout, because they're constantly looking to sprint, and you cannot sprint all the time, Certainly if you're a prop, you can't. And so it's so important there. It's like, okay, well, what are we looking to do? What is our plan? How do we periodize this so that we can get the best out of ourselves, and we can hit those targets, we can exceed beyond them, but we're also building in those little troughs there that we're recovering. It's lighter, so we're ready to go again.
Yeah. And when you said burnout, it just, our research on burnout and understanding of it, we would have traditionally looked at it as a physical component, but we know it's far more psychological. And we know this ourselves from our own rugby days. You will work hard in a session, you will work hard in a training session, in a game, in a really tough situation for a period of time, quite an extended period of time. But if you feel part of that team, it's not burning your energy as much. So burnout is so much more psychological. It's not the hours that we're putting in, it's the stress we're carrying within those hours. So if we take a business situation from that, is how do we work really, really hard when we've got those times where we got to increase sales, or we got to create a project, or we got to develop a program within the organization? We know this is going to be a really tough time. But what emotion as a leader are we bringing to that work that allows them to maintain strength longer? And by actually adding a bit of crack, having your mixers within the group that bring a bit of levity, it allows us to work longer and harder. So if we feel that we're under the cosh, an hour feels like 2 hours. If we are having a bit of banter, interacting and working really, really hard, and we have those small little windows or break or bit of banter, etc., then we can work 3 hours and it feels like an hour. And that's smart leadership, is recognizing we've got a serious project to do in a rugby context or a team sport context. We gotta go to hell, hurt locker consistently. We've got to build up our physiology. But what we're going to do is we're going to have banter. We're going to break it into different groups. We're going to have different games. We're going to have different sessions. And within the work format, how much can we bring those mixers to add levity whilst we're working? And then work becomes less of an issue. If we feel that we've given these people the goals and autonomy, then they own that more as well, which allows them feel more purpose in the work that they're doing. So again, it's less like hard work. It's how do we make a silk purse out of a sow's ear? We're still working bloody hard, but it doesn't seem like we're working hard, because that's what kills us in burnout. Burnout is somewhat psychological, carrying too much.
Absolutely. No, great points. So let's move on. You call confidence a red herring. That sounds like heresy in sport and business. Why is chasing confidence dangerous?
Yeah, I usually get shot for this one. Hopefully not later when I initially say it. They go, when I meet coaches or I meet new clients, mainly in sport, but also in business. Business are sort of less sort of confidence isn't going to stop me. It's more about focus, and they're right, because focus is key. But they'll say, "Oh, I want to work. I want you to work with my kid or myself on my confidence levels, because they're things." And I said, "Well, that's not going to really help you too much, And they go, "What?" I said, "No, that's." And then they go, "No, I want to feel confident. I want to feel confident." And I said, "Okay, so your feelings are going to be the thing that's going to make you play better." Yeah, it is. I said, "Well, if you fall down the ground in a tackle, what's going to get you off the ground quicker? Yourself or confidence?" "Well, myself, but I need confidence." You need confidence? Who decides you need confidence? So what I dismiss about this red herring is that if we fall into how do I feel before I go to war, which is not going to be comfortable, and it's going to be a little bit frightening, and it's going to be a little bit trepidatious, and it's going to be a big event or a small event, and it's all relative and perspective. And I'm resting my performance on how I feel. We're playing with fire. We're not supporting ourselves. After 4 years trying to get to the games, I don't feel like performing today. I just don't feel confident. But obviously that's a little bit sort of, a little bit sarcastic. But we undermine our performances if we give ownership of that performance to how I feel. We know in human beings, we are made up of the triad of our affect, which is our feelings, ABC, affect, behaviors, and cognitions. The thing that we control the most is our cognitions. So we absolutely should be in touch and aware of our feelings and our emotions, such as confidence, but it's us that controls. And where our ideal level of confidence is also one of those things which is a balance. The point in case of Michael Jordan, he was too confident that they were going to beat Utah Jazz. He said it's going to happen. He wasn't at his best. It's him taking control. We shouldn't be slaves of our emotions that, I don't feel confident today. I'm not going to do it. And we see this, unfortunately, in the world today. Kids not going to school, people trying to avoid work. I don't feel confident. I don't feel confident. What do you want to do? Where do you want to get to? What are you bringing? Well, I'm going to bring hard work. I'm going to commit to it. I'm going to get off the ground myself. I'm going to chase hard. I'm going to communicate hard. Okay, who controls those things? I can control that. So what are you going to bring again? Well, I'm going to bring my communication. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to run hard. I'm not perfect. I'm going to turn over a few balls, but I'm going to react really well. I'm going to chase after it. Okay, so that's what you're going to bring. That's what you're going to do. Okay, do you feel a bit more confident now? Well, yeah, I can do those things. Well, that's what we want. We want our confidence to be in our cognitions, not in our feelings where I don't feel confident. I don't think I can face it today. No, you're the boss of you. You're the one that decides to get off the ground. What stops us? Results, mistakes, and thinking, apart from Justin, that the rest of us are perfect.
Which
Sorry,
leads on into the next question about nerves. You say nerves are brilliant. So how can, leaders, when they're going into high frame business environments, pitching or doing public speaking, how can they use nerves in a positive way? And what do you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about performances, Liam, public speaking, podcasts, all of
course. Are you nervous now, Stephen?
Well, absolutely, 100%. As I said to Justin at the very start, just because I love him, I'm doing this. But there would have been times I would have been asked before, and there's a multitude of reasons, and we might get into them, but it's just not necessarily my thing. So yeah, absolutely, I feel nervous, and all I heard Erling Haaland, did I pronounce that correctly? He was talking about the other day. We attribute to like high performance athletes, they never get nervous. They bloody all get nervous. Those nerves really help us. It's the fight or flight situation, Liam, where I am at my best is right on that edge. So that edge of one of the coaches, brilliant manager coaches in the research, won Grand Slams and whatnot, said you want players to be afraid not to play and almost afraid to play. So it's at that real edge that we're at our best, But again, it's a little bit like confidence and in a way nerves as well. It's how we see it. So if the public speaker or the individual coming up to do a talk sees nerves as a negative thing or pressure as a negative thing, then they'll pull themselves down. They'll go into that natural worry zone of, oh God, then it's going to make a mistake. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Whereas if I see nerves as my brain is going to be on edge, I'm going to be thinking, I'm going to adapt, I'm going to bounce, I'm going to dance, I'm going to find solutions. I will find solutions. I need these nerves. And that's what really good performers should be getting. If we look at actors, and sometimes we do some work with dancers or actors, you get that nervousness before you go to perform. But it was a parent contacted me. Again, I extrapolate or expand a bit on the things, but the father rings me up. So sometimes I do a consultation with the parent first of all, mother or father, and he said, well, listen, young David, he's feeling the pressure. And I said, what age is David again? Oh, he's 14. I said, okay, red flag to me. He doesn't know what pressure is, right? So they go on. The young kid was trying to play in a tournament that was going to allow him to get into a national academy, et cetera, et cetera. So I meet with young David. How you doing? Oh, how's school? What are you doing? What else do you do apart from? Oh, yeah. So you've got this event coming up. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I hear you're feeling the pressure. And he goes, yeah. And I go, oh my God, you lucky sod. Isn't that bloody deadly? And he goes, I said, yeah. We need nerves to be our best. Have you heard the term nervous energy? Yeah. That gives us energy. Oh my God. We actually need nerves to be really sharp, really smart, really reactive on the court, really, really quick. And it's restructuring the thinking to go, so when I get those butterflies in the morning, when I feel a little bit anxious before I do a public talk, or before I go walk into my boardroom, or before I walk into my new job, or before I go onto the tennis court, that's actually where I want to be. Trust myself. I'm not perfect. I am what I am, but I'm going to wear a smile and I'm going to go at it, So yeah, nerves pressure is useful.
Yeah.
But we don't always like it. And go back to Justin's point, we can live in that pressure zone for a period of time. We do need rest and recovery, sleep, eat loads of burgers, rest, and active rest, that we're not just a tennis player or whatnot. So yeah, nerves are good and confidence is overrated, and we can fall into that confidence trap. How do I feel? Fuck that. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And what can you control in that moment? What can I do next?
And I think that's a really good point. Would you say that's about knowing yourself? I mean, I look at it, I agree with you. You have to have that sort of arousal state. As you use Michael Jordan as an example, not being aroused enough on that bell curve, but also you don't want to be over the top and losing the run of yourself. We've all been in changing rooms when we've seen guys totally freak out and lose the run of themselves. So it's knowing what you need, in my mind anyway, yourself, and what you need to do to get up to that optimal space to perform. Would that be correct?
And that goes back a little bit to what Liam was saying about the introvert and extroverted, and that, I suppose, it's not directly correlated, but certain different personality profiles will mean that they're going to be at an optimal level of performance, lower level of arousal, higher level of arousal, etc., to be actually at their best. So it really comes back to understanding them in front of you and planning those performances from that. There was something else that came through my mind there, but when I deal with athletes that go to games, because when you go to the Olympics or Paralympics or or big events, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise, as we know, in dressing rooms. And as you said, like everyone's getting wound up, And we are trying to be a team. We get that emotional contagion from being a team, but we still got to know where we are ourselves. And sometimes do we need to step down, turn down the the volume, or turn it up? I've just remembered a story about one of our ex players, which we might mention, and it was smart coaching, but toilet time. I will always advocate to my athletes, take toilet time. So a cubicle is often, or even for a business leader, going to the bathroom beforehand is that perfect place where we might get a bit of quiet space for us to sit and to breathe, ground ourselves and say, what am I about? Big delivery now, big presentation. I've got all the data, I've got all the detail. Am I going to be embedded in the detail, like you said about that, in the weeds, or am I going to step back and go, what message am I sending? And how's my body language? What am I going to say in the first few minutes? Or what's the crack? How's everyone today? And again, planning our performances is really, really useful. So having that toilet time when we're in the middle of a maelstrom, it allows us to step back. Okay, now I'm going to go to war. I might bring myself back up to that point. I might bring it slightly lower, but this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm bringing. That's where I am, and I'm still not perfect. And why we always, bringing that in is we want to be perfect, and that can stop us performing. Accepting that we're not perfect allows us to fight more. It allows us to be a scrapper, to be a fighter in any situation. Perfectionism will often stunt us. There was a player who we definitely won't mention, Justin. I remember we were preparing for an international, and I don't know if you were there at the time, but for some strange reason, one of the players went missing into the team talk before the team talk, and it was, yeah, he would have been a person that was very abrasive and would have had a very keen focus, stroke tunnel vision. So basically, for the team warm up, those opposition think this, we've got to be this, got this. The management recognized that he didn't need to be sitting in there. His level of arousal is already naturally at this point. If we bring him into that room, there's a good chance he might punch the referee when we go out. Do you know what I mean? So again, knowing your audience, the management recognized we don't need to have one of these, let's go to war, Winston Churchill speeches for this guy because he already sits up here. Do you know? I wonder if you know who I'm talking about.
A few people are popping into my mind. It could be one of two or three individuals.
Yeah. But again, knowing who's in front of you, I suppose, allows us to adapt.
Sure.
But I do go back to your point, Justin. I think it keeps coming back to where am I? Where do I want to go? Am I where I want to be? And we're constantly changing as humans. So it's not to be hard on ourselves, but just trying to find out where am I happy? Because happy is pretty close to where we're going to be at our best, before we go and get uncomfortable and go to war.
Okay, Stephen, we're into the quick fire round here. First things that pop into your mind. First question. One word you'd use to describe resilience.
Move. No. Keep moving. One foot in front of the other. I'm using too many words. Scrap.
What's the worst leadership habit you've seen in boardrooms today?
A lack of self-awareness in terms of body language. Body language sets tone that creates positivity or negativity. So it doesn't mean you don't walk into a boardroom with a real serious face, because there's things that you have to deal with. But if you do it where they're not in the right place, I think that's where you lose the room and you've lost the battle. I know I'm expanded, it's not a very short answer, but self-awareness of what message we're sending in terms of our body language. I think I told you one of the World Cup coaches is how I walk into a room after a loss, and we didn't have many losses, Stephen, had more of an impact on our next match than all the training sessions. Whether that was hyperbole or not, he recognized his influence by how we walked into that room. And if we walk into a boardroom, we got to understand what message we're sending.
Okay. From the pitch to the boardroom, what's the best pre-performance routine you've ever seen?
To perform, we need to prepare. And it's all about planning. And planning is visualizing. If the CEO or new head of department or director walks into that boardroom and he hasn't already been in that boardroom, i.e., he hasn't visualized who's going to be sitting there, how are they going to interact in, what is the relationship with these people, and he might not have all that information, or she might not have all that information. But if we go into that room without having visualized, planned, and worked out not only some of the specifics, but also what am I bringing in terms of emotional contagion and body language, then we are leaving ourselves vulnerable. So again, a longer answer than probably should be, it should be really planning and planning your mindset in terms of what attitude do I want to bring in here to get me where I want to go. And that means being in the room before you get into the room. Visualize how you want to show up, see it, and then be it.
Good. What's one setback you're now grateful for?
Quite a few of them. And I wouldn't have said that some years ago. You know, my mother and my father, they're an amazing team, Neil and Maureen, and you know, they would have always said, regret nothing. And I go, what the heck, regret nothing? I made a feck of that. I made a mess of that. But I suppose I look back and yes, we absolutely make mistakes. And my goodness, I could write a book on them. But I learned so much more from those than I would have learned if I hadn't had them. And I'm still learning and I'm still making mistakes regularly, consistently, today, tomorrow, and the next day. But I suppose genuinely, Justin, if I look back where I really fucked up, you know, contracts, choosing different businesses. When I went into that business, it was a challenge. It taught me so much. And I suppose it added to who I am now, good, bad, or indifferent. So it's part of me. And it's the shit times that we do grow the most in sport, in life, in anything. It's where we learn the most because we're forced to look deep. We are forced to take ownership, and we own something of everything. For me, we own something of everything, even if it's 1%. And God knows I own 99% of some of the shit that I did. I do, yeah. No, I remember there's a few times, yeah. There was a few late nights and there was a few other things that we won't go into now, Justin. Not to trivialize, I suppose. The question, I suppose, I like to look back and say I've learned and I'm still learning, but it's added to me. And genuinely, these mess ups, these mistakes have added some experience and understanding to me that makes me me.
100%. Last one. If every leader listening did just one thing differently tomorrow, what would it be? Or what should it be?
Go for a walk and reflect. Think. Remind themselves that they will always find a solution. When we tell ourselves we will find a solution, it helps our brains find solutions and work much more productively. And I think lastly, or maybe even before those, is remind ourselves that life is too short. Have a bit of crack. It's not that serious. It really isn't, you know, but we make it serious and that can pull us down. So yeah, having a bit of crack is really useful for us and for our brains to be more efficient.
Good answer.
That makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
Willie Anderson told me many a time, you can still be serious and go to war and have a bit of crack at the same time.
He's spot on.
Yeah, you're dead right about that. But Stephen, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I mean, you're a guy, I mean, I asked you before, I mean, you're a guy who's also played rugby at the very top. And sometimes I often wonder when you're dealing with elite athletes, how you think as a psychologist, but you're a wonderfully engaging guy, and the nuggets that you've given to us and our viewers today has been fantastic. We're really grateful for your time. You know, and everyone will learn an awful lot from this. You're a great guide. Thank you very much for coming on the show today, Stephen.
Well, I hope it was okay. And listen, thank you for the time, Justin and Liam and etc. The answers are all within us if we just take time to turn off the phone and think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolute pleasure having you on the show, Stephen. It's so very insightful. Thank you very much.
Still love you, Justy. Still love you.
I love you too.
On the left point, I'm going to go. Thank you.